It's time for another episode of The Oil Stream with Dustin Nielsen and Tom Gazzola, presented by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of The Oil Stream. Dustin Nielsen with you. Tommy Gazzola at the rink, the old rink report. Tommy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Dusty. Seems like a pretty good Friday, like a lot of good spirits. And despite the weather outside, which is frightful, everything seems to be delightful. And I apologize for that terrible rhyme.
You're quoting Christmas music in late January, buddy. I respect the attempt.
I'm sorry I did that, and I appreciate that. As a good friend, that means a lot. Thank you, Dustin.
As always, the Oil Stream is brought to you by our wonderful partners at Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. And with the snow coming down out there, as Tommy said, it's frightful. You know what's delightful? Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. Via DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, and Uber Eats. Nothing will warm you up as you look outside the window, seeing those big-ass snowflakes falling like a delicious Popeye's chicken sandwich. You're going to want to pick one of those bad boys up. Today, we'll get to Boston Pizza Appetizer in a sec. I got an interesting number for the cool bet inside the number segment a little bit later on. But Tommy, what's so Kane's back, Yamo's on the ice, lots going on in practice today.
Yeah, and like Holloway had a little bit of a spin with McDavid there, and you know, you're looking at the line combinations, and we saw both goalies working in the starter's net. I think some deception, to be honest with you, from Jay Woodcroft. I don't know how much to read into what we saw today outside of the fact that they had a good practice. And with this 11-7 setup, McDavid and Draisaitl have been playing with essentially everybody up front. And I fully assume we're going to see Jack Campbell start tomorrow. You know, Skinner got that last start. Campbell's 6-0 in his last starts. Yeah, so it's Woodcroft doing his thing. Like how people bring up the fact that he doesn't speak truthfully or just say it like it is on his post-game press conference after a loss. He also tends to throw up a lot of smoke screens at practice. That Chicago Blackhawks are in town, and you know, Jay plays the game within the game, sharp as a tack.
Well, just to break it down here, according, well, you're there, but I've got it in front of me, so I'll roll it out. You can confirm it. McDavid, Hyman, Holloway, Draisaitl with Ryan and Kane. The Nuge line stays the same with Janmark and Kostin. And then McLeod with Yessa, Puljujarvi, and Warren Fogle. Is that what was happening down there today?
That was what was happening today. And those were different than the combinations that we saw yesterday. It was different from the combinations we saw them run at practice on Monday. So that's why, again, it's like, well, I don't know how much to believe or read into it, because it just seems like it's like this heavy rotation of different combinations. So maybe we see it tomorrow. I guarantee if tomorrow is an optional morning skate, which they tend to be, we won't even get a better read on it. Let's see what happens come game time. And as we like, depending on the scenario that's going on the ice and in the game, if they're down or whatever, Woodcroft gets the blender out really quickly.
Yeah, well, and we could see them just go back to McDavid and Draisaitl to start the game. It's one last game. It's a week of competition. Those guys could have a huge game, get 2 points for the team, and move on. Derek Ryan, he's been playing a lot lately, Tom. He's been playing, 15, 16 minutes a night here recently, mixing them in alongside Draisaitl a bit, playing quite a bit in third periods. Today, Draisaitl and Kane, which is a spot you really don't see Derek Ryan in very often. Once again, maybe a little bit of a smoke screen. Plus, if they go 11-7, everybody's kind of rotating around. Anyway, what do you make of Ryan's play as of late? Like, has he played well enough to kind of get this top six push, or what's going on there?
He's been good. Like in a game against Columbus where there was a lot of disinterested players, the term I used and took some heat for the other night. He wasn't one of them. He was playing well. His feet were moving the entire night. Scored a really nice goal, and I think that was a reward for his hard work and hustle. And so, you know, maybe he gets this look or reward, if you will, in practice. Maybe he gets a few shifts here and there with McDavid or Draisaitl or maybe they start that way. But I think, depending on, again, how the game's going, they might switch it up. But that's good to see. Like, the Oilers have been getting depth scoring in the last few weeks, which has been
Yeah, they have.
reassuring. It's quieted the noise with people saying they need more depth. I'm sure they're still going to try to find someone depth-wise up front, but it is a good indicator when you've got guys like that putting up points, scoring goals, and being rewarded with a look-see with some of the best players in the world.
All right, let's get to your Boston Pizza appetizer. Once again, huge thanks to the folks at Boston Pizza in Kingsway. Met Trevor, great bartender. The whole staff was great there.
Yeah.
If you're in that area, want to watch the game on Saturday, swing by Boston Pizza. The lounge will be ready to go happy hour every day from 2 to 5, and then again from 9 until close. Tommy, lots to talk about D, and we're going to continue to beat that horse here until something happens. But what are you hearing from within the organization about the appetite to add like a defensive center that they can roll out in the bottom 6 here prior to the deadline?
Yeah, that's going to be something that they try to do. Add to the depth, add to the center, maybe a shot, because outside of Derek Ryan, really, he's the only guy that's a right shot that can take draws and play a little bit of center. So that is something that they're looking at. I don't know what is the specific target in terms of name. Yeah. But I'm sure if you go through some lineups, you can take a look at guys that are on expiring contracts or cheaper contracts that could be affordable and you could bring in easily. And then on defense, again, we saw Gavrikov the other night, and he's been stuck in his own zone, as a lot of the Columbus reporters were telling us the other night. Like he's good. They say he's hard to get around, and unfortunately, with this team or the Columbus Blue Jackets being so bad at getting pucks out of their own zone, no defenseman has looked that great this season because they're always hemmed in. But he's a guy that he doesn't let you get to the front of the net, and he makes plays. He doesn't provide a ton of offense, but he's a big body, doesn't come at a hefty price. We'll see, price in terms of cap hit. We'll see what he costs in terms of price point at the deadline and when you want to swing a trade with Columbus for him. But all the indicators and everything that was told to me and other reporters from Edmonton asking the Columbus guys was, he's the kind of guy that can bolster a back end. Now, is he a top 2 top pairing type of guy? No, not necessarily. Maybe like a 4 or 5. But that's kind of in Edmonton's wheelhouse, isn't it?
So, there's been all this talk about, all in and all that stuff. But, I mean, are you willing to give up a first plus for Gavrikov?
And he'd be a rental, quite likely. And it's a deep draft. That's another thing that's come up. You're going to have a
what
late
if the
round
question
pick.
was, would this make sense? It's a second that turns into a first if you re-sign him. So it's a second and a fourth that turns into a first and a fourth if he re-signs or something like that.
Well, then, that's way easier to stop because you're only committing to a second. And then depending on how you do, it could bump up to a first, and that would be a cause of your success. So if you're having that success, then I don't think as many people are complaining. I think that would be way easier to stomach than a straight up first.
I don't think you can give a first round pick for Gavrikov as a rental. I understand the all-in crowd, but I also don't think that means you can just make bad trades. To me that would not be an ideal trade, because I don't know how much of a significant upgrade he is on dialing back Broberg instead or limiting Kulak.
Yeah.
You want to give up a second for a rental like Gavrikov, I get it. But a first is a lot to give up for a rental that has questions anyway, right?
Yeah, and with Gavrikov, I know we're honing in on him.
Yeah, just talking about him.
I suppose like a defenseman of that ability to what is the impact ultimately at the end of the day? Well, I think in all likelihood, hypothetical, of course, it's a steadying presence in your mid pair to your bottom pair, right? It just steadies and brings some solid play to the back end. It's not really pumping it up. It's just steadying, calm, and bolstering it, in a solidifying type of way. That's the mindset I have, or the thought process I have when I'm like, well, what's the goal here? Steady the defense. I don't think you're bolstering it or really enhancing it by making a move of this type.
In the pursuit of help on the blue line, I guess this is kind of why I would lean more towards the rental mode as opposed to somebody moving forward. And that's because, Kulak's under contract. We know Nurse is under contract, and you want Broberg to play. Do you think they view Broberg as the number 2 guy behind Nurse next season? Because if that's the case next season and you're really happy with him, then, maybe a rental this year is enough, and then an elevated Broberg next year is a guy that you're hoping to get from somebody else this year. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. And I think that would be the best case scenario if Broberg is ready to step into a full-time second pairing role. And that's something that they're aware of and would be hopeful for. But talking to people in the organization, they're very aware that the ascension for a defenseman is never that straight, never that quick. There's always dips in play, and there's always twists and turns. And we've seen that with Broberg early on this season. And so I think they're not committing and putting their chips all in on that happening, because you can't just force it to happen. Like, what if you say, all right, you're taking over more minutes from Brett Kulak and you're trying to eat up some of Darnell Nurse's minutes, and then he just can't bear the pressure and the weight of that and can't deal with those matchups yet. What if he's not there? Then you just screwed yourself.
We were talking about on the mandate today with Rashad. He mentioned Bukestad just as a guy when we were talking about right shots that are on expiring contracts and stuff. And the ability to maybe go 12-6 more, but this team plays their best when they're 11-7. You're not going to bring in a guy and all of a sudden transition to 12-6, are you? Or does that lead to just another body being out of the lineup? And how do you approach that, I guess? Because it would be very weird if they play best at 11-7, and then you bring in a guy just to make, add something at the deadline, and all of a sudden you move away from your ideal lineup, right?
Yeah, and Jay Woodcroft said something interesting at yesterday's availability, and he was asked about the 11-7 setup. We know from talking to him that the traditional 12-6, I think it's fair to say he prefers. He's kind of talked about that, but he's not afraid of 11-7. Obviously, they did it last year out of necessity, and then he made the point of saying, since we switched to 11-7, I think it was at the Islanders game, somewhere around there, the team has gone 7-0-2. And for him to point that out was interesting. I don't know if he was just defending the decision because it's worked. I don't know if you need to defend it, or if he was hinting at, this is where we're at our best. That's right the direction now with maybe the they personnel want to go, we have. Yeah. So that might have been, kind of reading between the lines and listening to Jay and having known him for so long. I think that was an indicator that this 11-7 thing might be not necessarily out of necessity, but because of how much better it makes the team. Whereas before, last season, 11-7 was out of necessity because they had a bunch of injuries they were dealing with.
The Oilers are coming off a loss to the Blue Jackets. Chicago just went in and pumped Calgary 5-1. If you do believe in the old trap game, this shouldn't be one. This is your last chance to get in the win column prior to the All-Star break. Chicago just beat your provincial rival. There's no reason to take them lightly, even if their lineup is a disaster. They wrap up with a win here pre-All-Star break, don't they?
I think so, but I got caught in the trap the other night. They still picked up a loser point, but if that wasn't enough of a wake-up call, man, I lost to Chicago. Yeah. Yikes, that would leave everybody with a sour taste in their mouth. The good thing with the Oilers is they've gone run and gun with the Hawks in both games so far, and they've had a way with Chicago. So I anticipate that happening again. I don't think we're going to see a dud from like we saw on Wednesday night, and I think they'll cap it off the right way. I'll tell you this: the mood around here right now is pretty good. I had a bunch of conversations with guys today. Leon Draisaitl and I talked about what's going on with his hair. He's growing it long, if you haven't noticed, and we both agreed that we look awkward with heads because we both tried it in the past. And then Cody Ceci and I discussed Matt Cassian, who is his former teammate, and we all love Matt Cassian. So that was another conversation. Klim Kostin, while I was talking to Brett Kulak about hunting, pushed him out of his stall in a fun way. And then we discussed him getting cut and needing stitches, and he was not happy about that. So it was a very cordial mood around here. And I think that kind of is a tell as to how well this team is performing and the confidence it has in itself. If things were bad, you're not having those chats. Guys were sitting in their stalls, willing to talk, having fun. There's a good vibe here, and I think riding into Saturday, that should bode well. Again, heavy emphasis on should.
All right, let's wrap up with the Cool Bet Inside the Numbers segment. If you want to bet Oilers and Hawks, do it on Saturday over at coolbet.com. Stay cool, bet responsibly with our partners at Coolbet. Tommy, over or under 1.5 trades that impacts the NHL roster by Ken Holland prior to the deadline?
Prior to the deadline?
Yeah.
Like on the deadline or prior to the deadline?
Just any time between now and the deadline. I know we all want trades to happen all the time. I think it's going to be pretty quiet up until the deadline. So, yeah.
It'll over. I think he makes 2 or 3. And there might be some. Do we count like the minor league moves? Because they'll definitely.
No, I said it has to impact the NHL roster.
Okay, yeah. I still go over. I think there'll be 2. At least 2.
Yeah. I think there might just be 1. I'm going to take the under. I think he's going to get a defenseman.
Okay.
I mean, I understand the push for but their forward group is that they can win a Stanley Cup with their forward group. I don't think they need to improve their forward group to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So if the prices are high, as they usually are prior to the deadline, I think the focus on the assets would be to just add a defenseman and just roll with your forward group. I mean, a center would be nice, but if you really want to play 4 guys down the middle, you can play the best 4 guys down the middle in the league. Like you have 3 centers on your roster who are top 15 in league scoring, which is just insane.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah,
I could see, maybe it's a cheap deal that maybe it's a 4th round pick for somebody that could come in and might be able to outplay Derek Ryan or somebody else you want to play at center. But I'll take the under on this one at 1. I think we always get so excited for deals, and sometimes you're just left disappointed. Ken Holland will do something. I just don't know if he'll do a lot. So we'll see. Plus,
I'm going over.
Plus, the salary cap has to come in. They have room for nobody, right? So unless they free some of that up, and maybe that leads towards the over because he's got to do another deal to free cap space up somewhere to pull the trigger on something else. So, yeah, might be a backdoor cover.
Keep an eye on Yamamoto too.
Yeah,
Dusty, keep an eye on Yamamoto and his injury. Although he looked really good skating out there today, but he's had that lingering upper body, neck, head area thing for the entire season. So we'll see.
He's back on the ice, but he can't even play till February 12th anyway, right? So it's be a long couple weeks here for Yamo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those types of injuries, though, like you never are 100% sure. It sounds like that could take a while, or he could just come back and he's fine. But the way it's gone here is something to just keep in the back of your mind, I think.
All right, so remember about Yamamoto's injury moving forward. Tommy, I think you've got a big date tonight, so have fun with that, buddy, and get us out of here, man. Text me. Let me know how it goes.
I will. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Smash that thumbs up button. We out. Have a great weekend.